Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. This is And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce some of the best creators from all over the world, and we find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of And I Quote channel, and our guest on this episode is writer extraordinaire Keith DeCandido is here. Hello, good sir. How are you?
Hello. Good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too, and it's good to see you who may be watching or listening to this program right now. Do not forget to like and share with all of your friends. If you're watching this live or on a replay, thank you for doing so. If you have any questions for our guests of honor, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. More than happy to take those as they come in respectively. With that piece of business out of the way, Keith, what would you say were some of your favorite books or writers growing up as a youngling?
Well, when I first started reading stuff on my own, my parents gave me a lot of stuff to read that still I think has a pretty good influence on. In particular, reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, the Earthsea trilogy by Ursula K. Le Guin, the various young adult books written by Robert A. Heinlein, and also the Jeeves and Wooster stories by P.G. Wodehouse, which were not science fiction, but still had a pretty profound influence on me. Those were a lot of the first things I read, and a lot of it which kind of formed who I became as an adult by reading that stuff as a kid. And then I continued reading in the genre continually after that with a lot of people. But I think those four are kind of the formative ones.
Good picks. Just out of curiosity, though, did you get a chance to see the Legend of Earthsea? I think it was like a mini series that they put out on Sci-Fi channels many, many moons ago. Did you ever see that?
I honestly don't remember if I did actually watch it or not. I have no. If I did watch it, I have no memory of it anymore. So read into that what you will.
No, it's fine. It's fine. The only reason I asked is because I remember watching it on Sci-Fi, and also starred Kristen Crook from Smallville. It had Shawn Ashmore from the X-Men series. Danny Glover was the wise sage character. Monica Bellucci was also in it, so it had a great cast.
Yeah,
for its time.
Yeah, but like I said, nothing.
Okay, no, hey, it's all right. It's all right. If we remember, we don't. It's all good. It's all good. What would you say are some of your favorite movies, past or present?
I've always been a big fan of Akira Kurosawa's movies. Seven Samurai, Rashomon, Redbeard, The Hidden Fortress, and so on. Those have always been among my favorites. I mean, I listed my favorite movies. We'd be here for the whole hour. There's a lot of different movies that I enjoy. But ranging from older stuff like Citizen Kane and, like I said, the Rashomon and Casablanca, some obvious classics. Others like I'm a big fan of A Few Good Men, and The Princess Bride obviously is a big one. The original MASH movie. There's a lot. Of course, I'm blanking on all of them now, but I have a pretty extensive movie collection on DVD here at home.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with physical media. These are the facts of the case, and they are undisputed.
Yes, indeed.
There you go. See what I did there?
Yes.
It's Few Good Men Among Others is one of my favorites too. So
I actually saw the theatrical play version of A Few Good Men way back when Michael O'Hare was in it, from probably best known as playing Jeffrey Sinclair on Babylon 5. He played Colonel Jessup, and it was fascinating because it's his interpretation of Jessup was 180 degrees from Nicholson's. It was very quiet, very intense, and as scary as what Nicholson did in a completely different way, and it was equally effective. It was great.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. That is really really cool. And speaking of Babylon 5, kind of brings us to the next part of that question. Some of your favorite TV series, past or present. Even though we'd probably be here all day.
Oh yeah. Well, similar to why I like A Few Good Men so much is also Sports Night and The West Wing, which were both shows developed by Aaron Sorkin, who wrote A Few Good Men. I'm a huge fan of Sorkin's work, so pretty much anything he's involved with, I'm at least going to give a shot at. Among my other favorite shows, I'm a big fan of really good police procedurals. So a lot of my favorite shows are things like Barney Miller, Hill Street Blues, The Wire, Homicide: Life on the Street, The Shield, Prime Suspect, SWAT, both the original and the more recent reboot, and a bunch of also ones from Britain and Australia and New Zealand, like I mentioned Prime Suspect, also Line of Duty, The Brokenwood Mysteries, and a bunch of others. Probably my favorite show of all time, I mentioned the MASH movie. The MASH TV show is probably one of my favorites. That and it's on my mind right now because for some reason I've been on a kick of watching old episodes just randomly. But that show just was the perfect storm of everything, good characterization, humor, drama, just hit all the right things. It's kind of the platonic ideal of a TV show in a lot of ways. And obviously all the Star Trek shows. I certainly I've been a fan of those since I was a mere youth. And I've continued to enjoy Star Trek to a tremendous extent.
Well, live long and prosper, that's for sure. Still going X amount of years later.
Yep.
With all the
almost 60 now.
Wow.
Yeah, next year it's weird because it feels like the 50th anniversary was only like a year ago, and here we are coming up on 60 years of Star Trek now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 2026. Can you believe it, folks? It's going to be happening here in the next couple of weeks. Next couple of weeks after the holiday season wraps up. I know. Fasten our seatbelts. Walk call, Mr. Soto. With that wasn't right, but still, I digress. I digress. So, when did you start writing?
Technically, when I was 6. It was. I wrote a book on. This is when I was in summer camp. When I was 6 years old, I wrote a book on construction paper called "Reflections in My Mirror." It was terrible. I was 6. But and I did a couple of other silly things that I wrote, when I was a little kid. I always wanted, to make stories. My parents were librarians, still are technically. I mean, they're all retired. They're retired now, but and they instilled a love of storytelling and of reading in me. And for as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be somebody who made stories. So that was always a part of my self-image in a lot of ways. I didn't start. I started writing things that actually got published that other people saw in high school. I wrote for my high school newspaper and my high school literary magazine. The literary magazine, as you can imagine, was also terrible because it was all written by teenagers. But I did a short story for that, and then I wrote movie reviews mostly for the newspaper. And then I continued to do that in college, working on the paper at Fordham University. Writing reviews of different things, and then I took over as arts editor sophomore year, and then senior year I was the executive editor of the paper, which led nicely to being able to work as an editor when I graduated college. That enabled me to do something that would pay the bills until my writing career took off, if it took off, which it eventually did. But so yeah, that the first professional writing I did was in 1989, which is when I was still a senior at Fordham, and I wrote some pieces for the Comics Journal magazine, and then I did a news piece. I did some reviews for them, and then in 1990 I wrote a couple articles for Library Journal and for Publishers Weekly. And reviews and articles about. I wrote actually what was at the time a very groundbreaking article on the use of comic books in libraries, which was a new thing in 1990. Now it's fairly common, but the idea of graphic novels and comic books in libraries was very new in the late 80s, and and the piece I wrote was actually a fairly influential one, which was pretty good for a 21-year-old kid. I didn't start writing fiction until a few years later. In 1994, I sold my first short story, which was a Spider-Man short story that I wrote with John Gregory Betancourt for an anthology called The Ultimate Spider-Man, and that led to other work. I wrote some Marvel short stories. I wrote a Magic the Gathering short story. I wrote a Doctor Who short story. Later did a Spider-Man novel that I collaborated on with Jose Nieto. I novelized a film called Gargantua, and did a Buffy the Vampire Slayer novelization, a couple of Young Hercules novels, and then I started writing for Star Trek, which was a big thing for a while for me. So yeah, that's pretty much the trajectory of my early writing career.
Jeez. Well, that's a heck of a way to start and continue to climb, the ladder and hone your craft and improve and all that stuff. So I bet the summer of '89 was grand for you with all those movies coming out, with Indiana Joneses and Batmans and all this other stuff that was coming. Back to the Future's Part 2 were coming out at that time in '89. So that must have been
it was a pretty good movie to be a nerd. A pretty good year, rather, to be a nerd.
Yes. It's a very good year. I mean, I remember watching Last Crusade and '89's Batman on VHS constantly as a youngin. So I watched them all the still do, by the way. I think '89's Batman holds the record for the most amount of times I've watched a single movie. So I mean, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts when it comes to that film. I mean, summer of '89. I wish I could have been in the theater to see all those. I was too young at the time, but still. I was just a wee lad. I was only 2 when that.
Yeah, that was the year I turned 20, and I remember going to see all of those in the theater, including, unfortunately, Star Trek V. Wasn't a perfect year.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Whew.
Yeah,
once was enough for me. I'm not going back to that one, but I'm not. But aside from that, no, it was a great year, and congrats on all those stories and all those things coming to fruition. It's fantastic. What would you say are some of the rewards about being a writer in general?
I mean, I love telling stories, and just being able to do that is very fulfilling. There's a thrill when the book shows up with your story or that you wrote. When that comes in the mail and you get for the first time, you hold the book in your hands. I have been doing this for over like 35 years now, going back to the nonfiction stuff that I did. And it's still, the thrill is still just as big. When I got my copy of my latest book, when I got this one, the Supernatural Crimes Unit book, getting this in my hands was just as exciting as it was when I got that issue of the Comic Journal that had my first piece in it, and my first novel. When I got Gargantua, and when I got the Spider-Man novel that I wrote, Venom's Wrath, and the Spider-Man anthology with my short story, and the magazines that I wrote for, all of it. There's still an incredible thrill of seeing that right there with your name on it and knowing that people are reading it. And there's a real fulfillment in telling stories that I've always had. And being able to bring those stories to other people and have them hopefully enjoy it. And I've generally gotten pretty good feedback. There's been a lot of instances where people have really enjoyed what I've written, and sometimes even been influenced by what I've written. One of the things that really touched me, 20 years ago, I did a Star Trek novel called Articles of the Federation, which was basically a Star Trek version of The West Wing. It was a year in the life of the Federation president, and somebody who read that book, they were in their teens at the time. That book actually influenced them to get into local politics, and they're still doing it and doing very well at it. And that was just mind-boggling to me that I could have that kind of influence on somebody, and it's wonderful. It's a very heady feeling, and it's a joy to be able to bring stories that people love to other people. Storytelling is one of the things that makes us human, and I really love being able to be part of that tapestry.
Well, you definitely made it. You made it so, number one. So that's no, that's great, and congratulations on that. That's really, really amazing. It really, really is, and great things you share with us about being the rewards of a writer. So, opposite side of the fence, though, what are some of the challenges about being a writer?
Well, you got to actually, hit your deadlines, and in my case, I'm completely self-employed. I have been since 1998. So for over 2.5 decades, I have been completely self-employed, which is incredibly difficult. It's a goddamn impossible way of life. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's not for everybody, and it's very difficult and sometimes anxiety inducing. There are times when the bank account has like, $10 in it, and you somehow have to figure out how to feed, clothe, and house yourself. It's very difficult, and balancing all the deadlines and all the commitments is really difficult, and has gotten more difficult as I've gotten older. Thank goodness for Google Calendar, man, because I'd be screwed without that. But I mean, just right now, I've got, just last night I outlined a short story for a role playing game that I have to write, before the beginning of December, I think, is the due date on that. And I only just wrote the outline yesterday, and I have to get approval from the gaming company before I can write the story. I've got a novel that's due at the end of the year. I need to, I have some editorial commitments, a couple manuscripts I need to edit. There's just so much, and you have to juggle it all and make sure you hit, like I said, hit all your deadlines, because you don't get paid until you finish it, as a general rule. So, and it's the storytelling part isn't as difficult. For me, I'm always thinking of stories. If I'm prompted by all sorts of stuff that happens around me, and notions that pop into my head. So the well has yet to run dry there, at least. And so hopefully it won't, and I will be able to keep doing this, because I really do enjoy it, even though it is, as I said, a goddamn impossible way of life.
Yeah, definitely deadlines. Yeah, when I just got a deadline from somebody I'm going to be writing a short story for, and the deadline's coming up in early December, and I've only started the beginnings of this short story I'm piecing together. So I got some ground to make up, and the deadline in December is coming faster than we may want to think, but we gotta put pedal to the metal and put pen to paper, or in our case, just keep punching those keys, so
Yes.
word slinging, as one might say. That's my good friend Bobby Nash, who's a crime fiction writer, he says it's word slinging time, folks. I'm like, yeah, it is.
It sounds really like Bobby.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I got this from him, because he sells this at conventions, and I said, can I have one of those? He's like, yeah, sure. So I have one of these. It's a writing journal. There you go. So anytime I need to put something down, or I have an idea for something, or whatever the case may be, this wonderful piece of material, this writing journal, has got all these lined sheets. By the way, lined sheets of paper are way better. So thank you, Bobby. Fantastic stuff.
Nice.
Love you, man. Yeah, I got a number of his books. I got the writing journal, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, he's been very, very good to me. He's been kind of like the Obi-Wan to my Luke Skywalker. So, yeah.
Good choice. Yes. Bobby's good.
Man.
But
he really is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful person. And what else is wonderful is this episode thus far. And I quote, don't forget to like and share with everybody. If you have any questions for our guest of honor, Keith DeCandido, let us know in the comments or the chat. If you watch us live on the replay, thank you for doing so. One of the things I want to go back to just for a little bit here, Dragon Precinct. So how did this come about? And for someone who's unfamiliar with this, what is the synopsis, if you will?
So Dragon Precinct is a mix of epic fantasy and police procedure. I usually pitch it as Law and Order meets Lord of the Rings. One reviewer referred to it as Dungeons and Dragnet, which I loved. The concept, it originated with the two main characters. The two main characters are Torin Banwiveld and Danthras Tressilian, who are both RPG characters that I played in college for Torin, and then in my 20s for Danthras. Both were characters I really liked. They were long-lasting characters in two different campaigns that I did, that I was involved with, and I thought it would be really cool to do a story with the two of them. And I must have started like 5 or 6 different Torin and Danthras stories that were none of them worked for various and sundry reasons. And then I hit on the idea of them being detectives, and like I said before, I've always been a fan of cop shows. In addition to all the TV shows I mentioned, I'm also just fascinated by police procedure generally. And some of my favorite nonfiction books are books about policing. In particular, David Simon's Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets, which is the novel that both Homicide: Life on the Street and The Wire were spun out of, and that combining that particular genre with the epic fantasy genre, which also I've been a fan of since I was a kid, having read, like I said, the Tolkien books and the Earthsea books and so on. It sounded like it would be fun to mix those two and combine those tropes. Speculative fiction is particularly open to this kind of genre blending because what makes science fiction and fantasy what they are is the setting. Every other subgenre is defined by plot. Mysteries, horror, thriller, romance, all of those are what they are because of the plot. Speculative fiction is what it is because of the setting only. It can have any plot. So it lends itself to being able to mash genres like this. And so taking an epic fantasy setting and putting a cop story plot on it was really appealing to me. And it's something I've done on lots of other occasions, both before and after Dragon Precinct. My very first short story and first novel were both Spider-Man, but they also involved members of the NYPD working with Spider-Man. The idea of mixing police procedure with the fantastic has something that's been a part of a lot of different writing projects of mine over the years. Because it's something I really enjoy. They're two of my favorite subgenres. So with Dragon Precinct, the first book, it originally came out in 2004. Simon & Schuster started up an imprint of science fiction and fantasy novels, and that this was part of it. And then after Dragon Precinct was published, the imprint was discontinued, and I was kind of left flapping in the breeze. It wound up being picked up in 2011 in the small press, originally by one publisher, and then that publisher kind of fell apart in 2018, and then Eastbeck Books picked it up, and they reprinted all the old ones and continued publishing, starting with Mermaid Precinct. But the conceit of Dragon Precinct is it takes place in the city-state of Cliffsend, which is a port town in the mythical land of Flingaria, which has humans and elves and dwarves and halflings and gnomes all living in the various parts of this land. Cliffsend is the largest city-state, or one of the largest city-states in the land. It's lots of people of all sorts of kinds. It's kind of like, the New York City of the of the world. It's where a lot of the commerce is done. A lot of people going through there to get to other places, and of course there's lots of crime. And the Cliffsend Castle Guard has been formed into a policing agency where they maintain law and order within the domain. And the two main characters are Torn and Devers, those two RPG characters, who are two of the detectives who solve the more complicated crimes that happen. And it's, like I said, it's fun to take the fantasy chocolate and mix it with the mystery peanut butter.
Yes, for certain. Mill, I'll tell you what, you had me at Law and Order meets Lord of the Rings. That is a great premise. Like, because I grew up watching reruns of all the Law and Orders. There's like 30 of them now. So I've seen reruns of The Mothership. SVU was the first one I ever saw when it was still, season 5, I think it was 2003, 2004 on NBC. I was watching it as it was airing, not, the reruns that they had on USA Network, which I think they still do. And then Criminal Intent was shipped over to USA after NBC, wanted to get rid of it or whatever. Or they put it over a different network. There was a cast changeover. Then Trial by Jury came out with B.B. Newworth and Amy Carlson at the time. And then after that was and Law and Order LA came out with Doc Ock himself, Alfred Molina, as one of the main cops. What was his name? Yellow Jacket was the co-cop. Corey Stoll was in that. Yeah. Skeet Ulrich, Ghostface from Scream 1. Sorry, that's a spoiler for a 30-year-old film, but whatever. He was like those shows were really, really good, and I wish TBJ and Law and Order LA especially would have continued, because I really like the cast. And plus, transferring Law and Order from New York to La La Land, LA, is exciting to me. I wish they would have continued that. I'm so bummed everything got canned after one season. Yeah,
but I've done that. There was the Precinct series. I also have the Super City Police Department. Which thus far I've only done one novel and a few novellas and some short stories. And then also my latest book, which I was holding up before, the Supernatural Crimes Unit, which just came out. So which
Yeah, and,
which is
and
more
congratulations on that. Yeah, so someone who's unfamiliar with this, what exactly is the supernatural crime scene? And by the way, that's a killer cover if I ever saw one with a
I
werewolf.
love that cover so much. Jeff Wong is the art director for Weird Tales magazine, and also does the art direction for the Weird Tales Presents imprint that puts this out. The book is published by Blackstone Publishing, and they are the ones who currently distribute Weird Tales magazine in ebook and audio form. And they also have a deal with Weird Tales to do this imprint. It launched about a year and a half ago with Jonathan Mayberry's Necrotech, and is continuing to do stuff, including my Supernatural Crimes Unit book. In a similar vein to the Precinct books, except instead of taking place in a high fantasy setting, it takes place in contemporary New York. The SCU was formed. The conceit of the universe is that supernatural beings and magic users do exist, but they have mostly existed underground and kind of invisible, and not really noticed by the mainstream. That changed about 5 years prior to when the book starts, when a mayor's aide is killed by a vampire, and it's caught on camera. The whole thing, including, biting his neck, sucking his blood, turning into a bat and flying away, the super strength, all of it. So a task force was formed to close this particular case. And then once the vampire was tracked down and arrested and put on trial, they then formed the unit, which is headquartered in a tenement building on 106th Street in Manhattan, and is responsible for dealing with all the crimes in the city that involve magic and or monsters of various sorts, because they've kind of been outed at this point. What's fun is the different reactions of people. Some people think it's all nonsense and it's all completely ridiculous and a waste of everybody's time. And of course, this isn't real. Don't be silly. Some people are like, well, it's about damn time you realized that this was going on. And most people are just like, whatever, I'm late for work. But the unit, it's 5 detectives, a sergeant, a lieutenant who's in charge, and a few uniforms and a bunch of support staff. And they're still feeling their way around on how this all works. They're trying their best to manage this. The opening scene involves arresting a shape-changing domovoi, which is a creature from Russian mythology, who has committed assault. There's a kappa, which is from Japanese mythology, which is a sort of looks like a mix between a turtle and a lizard, who killed his roommate. And there's a bunch of other things. There's vampires, there's werewolves, but there's also a Luduan, which is from Chinese mythology. References to various other things like a Tautia from Chinese mythology, and what else? An Wesconaw, which is native, Naiad, which is European, and a bunch of others. And the idea is that the monsters are just as multicultural as the people in New York City. You don't just have the usual vampires and werewolves and mummies and such. There are also other creatures and other people from different locations, but also there are people who use magic. And the main plot of this first book is a very powerful magic user who initially comes to SCU's attention because a couple of corpses have been liquefied, which is a very powerful spell, and they were liquefied before an autopsy could be performed, which with the object of stalling the murder investigation. But they then discover that this magic user, is going to be engaging in a very nasty ritual, which will kind of unleash hell on earth, specifically Zoroastrian hell on earth. I decided to use the Deva, which are demons from Zoroastrian mythology who are going to be unleashed on the world if this ritual happens. So that's the main premise of the first book. I had a lot of fun with creating the characters. It's an ensemble piece, and how they deal with all the craziness that comes with the supernatural creatures and whatnot. So,
Man, this it kind of reminds me of that trailer I saw some years ago for a little thing called Hellboy. There are things that go bump in the night, Agent Myers, and we are the ones who bump back. So that's one thing. The second thing is, does the prologue open with in New York City?
No.
Do you have an opening narration like the television show has?
No. because then I would get sued by NBC and nobody wants that.
Oh, it would be kind of cool if there were a little prologue that had. I mean,
Yeah.
hypothetically, but with rights
Yeah.
issues and all that stuff, I can understand why. But
And I'd rather this was its own thing. So yeah.
You're right, which is great. I'm just saying, like, it'd be kind of funny if readers popped it open and like, wait a minute, in the city of New York, someone said, wait, this sounds familiar. Haven't I heard? It'd be a nice little throwback, but it's all good. I understand why. Rights issues aside, but this sounds really, really good, man. For real.
Thank
Like
you.
when I see you at Farpoint, I'm gonna have to pick up a copy of this, have you sign it personally.
That could probably be arranged.
Yes. Sounds like a wonderful, wonderful idea. And outside of all the wonderful things you have written and published and put out there in the world, if someone wants to be a writer themselves, what advice would you give to those individuals?
Finish what you start. That's the two major pieces of advice that I always give to people who want to be a writer. That's the first one, because it's really easy to start writing a story. It's a lot harder to finish it. There was bunch of years ago when I was still working as an editor full-time, the company I worked for got the rights to Alfred Bester's work. We reprinted The Demolished Man and The Star's My Destination. There was actually a novel that Bester left unfinished when he died, and we hired another writer, Roger Zelazny, who was to finish the book, and then he died. But so it was the world's first doubly posthumous collaboration. But and we also put a short story collection together of Bester's various short fiction, including access to his unpublished work. A lot of it was unpublished for good reason, but there were a couple of stories in there that we did, including one called The Devil Without Glasses, which he was in the middle of revising when he died. And another story that was a fragment. It was called And 3.5 to Go. And it was a really, really, like, there were some wonderful ideas in there. And I was reading through this, and you could tell that he had no clue where he was going with it. But there was some really good stuff in there. And the last page of the manuscript that we had in all caps written on the bottom of the page, it is much easier to start a thing than finish it, which is absolutely true. The ratio of stories in the world that have been started to stories that have been finished is about 8 billion to 0.5. It's really the hard part is finishing it. And so many aspiring writers make the mistake of constantly dicking around with the early parts of the book because they want to make it absolutely perfect and never actually get to the end. Or they get halfway through the story and get distracted by a shiny thing and then start a different story, and they wind up with a whole bunch of started stories with nothing finished. An unfinished story is nothing. It's a fragment. There's nothing you can do with it. And the second piece of advice I usually give is related to that. The first draft is allowed to suck. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect the first time, because it's not going to be perfect the first time. It never is. The important thing is to keep, as Bobby Nash so eloquently put it, slinging them words. Just keep putting one word in front of the other until you get to the end. They don't have to be the best words the first time. Most of them are going to be the anyhow. So just get through to the end, get it finished. It is much easier to revise a finished and fix a finished product than it is a fragment. And once you get it done, then you've got a complete thing, and it's much easier to then mold that and fix it and edit it and get it into something publishable. But you got to finish it first. And that really, that I think is the most important thing, is to finish what you start, and don't worry if it's not perfect yet. It will get there eventually, but you got to finish it first.
100%. Yeah, every draft I've written thus far of my short stories, because I started diving into writing short stories this year, and my first one got published back in July from Veritas Entertainment. Thank you guys. Nice. Love you. So happy about that. Yeah, I got the book back here in our bookshelf. I got a paperback and a hardcover. When I had that in my hand, it was like, oh my gosh, I wrote this, and it's in this anthology with other writers. Who'd have thunk 30 years ago that I'd be a writer? Because when I was in school, you had to do it for school purposes at the time. Yeah. And when I graduated and moved on to other things, I never thought about being a writer. I just wanted to be an entertainer, which in this case is being a podcaster, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But ever since I joined this Discord many months ago, earlier in 2025, I thought, this has got my wheels turning again. I think I got a couple of ideas for stories here. This is interesting. And then as we were talking about earlier, I just started slinging words all of a sudden, and one of them got entered into a anthology. And here we are, all this time later. It got published back in July. Congratulations to everybody at Veritas Entertainment for being a part of that anthology. Western Tales Volume 1 is what it's called. So, and I love Westerns. So that's why I wrote it, because I personally like the Western genre. So I figured, what the hey? Yeah. You got nothing to lose. So
Yeah.
I think how many words was it? I think it was like a little more than 2,000. I think it was 2,500. Maybe, I think it was even 3,000 words. So, hey, I'll take it. Short stories is a good way to get someone's feet wet anyway.
Oh yeah, that's how I got started. I published a bunch of short stories before my first novel, and I still love doing short stories.
You do.
It's a fun medium, to work in. Just to not every story needs to be incredibly long and complicated, and so I like the flexibility that you get with the shorter format sometimes.
That is very true. That's very true. Excellent points. Excellent points by the one and only Keith DeCandido here on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share. If you're watching us live on the replay, hello there. If you have any questions for the guest of honor, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to take those as they come in respectively. Any special memories from being at conventions or other events, whether you're there as the vendor or there as the attendee, that stand out?
Oh God. I've been going to conventions since the late 80s. That was when I first started going. When I was in college, I went to a convention local to New York called Icon, which was held out at Stony Brook University for a long time. And I've got so many good memories just of going to that. That was where I met Harlan Ellison for the first time as a fan. And then later I got to go to Icon as a guest, and I was actually on panels with Harlan, which was great. God, I way too many to list here, starting there, going through to, in the early 90s, first as press, because I was involved in a public access show on in New York cable called The Chronic Rift, where we did news and interviews and panel discussions on the genre, which we ran from 1990 to 94. And we went to some conventions as press, more or less. And then once I started working as an editor in 94, or 93 rather, and then later as a writer, and I've just continued to go to conventions, so many conventions, over the last 40 years. I've gotten to meet all sorts of wonderful people. I've conventions where I've been able to hook up with some of the people I've collaborated with over the years, who I first met at conventions. I've done all sorts of weird performances and such. In the 90s, Esther Friesner used to write silly plays and would have us perform in them for the entertainment of the people. I occasionally would help out. Michael Jan Friedman, but Robert Greenberger, and the late Peter David used to do a thing called Mystery Trekkie Theater 3000 at Shore Leave, which they did for a while. And I would sometimes assist them with that. They would always have an opening skit. I also filled in when either Mike or Bob were unavailable to do it one year, and for whatever reason, I was their primary pinch hitter. And I've performed with two different bands at different conventions. In the 90s, I was with a band called the Don't Quit Your Day Job Players, and we were musical guests at a bunch of conventions throughout the late 90s. And now currently I'm with a band called Boogie Nights, which performs at Farpoint, Shore Leave every year. We've also been doing a newer convention called Convivial, and it's given me the opportunity to play music, which I don't get to do nearly often enough. So that's always fun. That started out the Don't Quit Your Day Job Players started out just doing jam sessions at conventions. It was me, David Honingsberg, Peter Heck, Spider Robinson, Eric Raymond, a bunch of other people, just jamming at room parties. So many different memories. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing conventions for 40 years. I got to moderate a Farscape 10th anniversary panel with Ben Browder, Claudia Black, Rockney O'Bannon, and Brian Henson at the San Diego Comic Convention, which I did in 2009. I've hung out at parties with all sorts of interesting people, including, I remember one time in 2008, having a conversation with Peter David, Mike Barron, George Takei, and Walter Koenig, discussing the then current presidential election, which was a wonderful conversation, leaving aside the fact that it was with two great comics writers and Mr. Sulu and Mr. Chekhov. It was also just a really fun conversation among, five interesting people who were very invested in what was going on. I've done, a ton of really fun panels, done readings, done autographings, done all sorts of stuff. Gotten meet lots of wonderful people, and yeah.
Wow, great memories, man. That's really cool, man. Sitting down with a salute and check out. Good Lord, who'd have thunk?
Yeah.
But great conversations nonetheless, and looking forward to seeing everybody at Farpoint, Shore Leave, all the familiar shows that Keith and I are familiar with, and some of the other ones. There's some other ones too that we're all looking forward to being a part of, or just hanging out, shooting the breeze, catching up with each other on what we've been doing and things of that nature. So it definitely is something to look forward to.
One other convention memory I do want to mention,
go ahead.
because it relates to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, sure.
As a general rule, I do not like go all fangoobery. I don't get all ridiculous. These are people, and a lot of them are people I've worked with. They're colleagues as much as they are people I've admired. I mean, it's been great. In some cases, like people like who I read as teenagers, who then became friends and colleagues, like the three guys I mentioned, Mike Friedman, Bob Greenberger, and Peter David, were all people whose work I loved and admired as a teenager, and then they have since become very good friends, and that's wonderful. But the one time I made a complete idiot of myself, it was at ReaderCon, the one and only ReaderCon I've been to, actually, and the guest of honor was Ursula Le Guin. And as I said, the Earthsea trilogy was one of the formative books of my youth. Her essay collection, Dancing on the Edge of the World, is one of my absolute favorite works of nonfiction. And all of her stuff, not just the Earthsea books, but also The Left Hand of Darkness and a bunch of other stuff. Just so many books that were hugely influential on me growing up. And when I met her, I just made a complete gibbering idiot of myself. It was embarrassing. It really was. And it's the only time I've done that, yeah, as a general rule, I'm usually pretty fine in those situations, but and I've got, like I said, I've gotten to meet lots of other heroes and I was fine with it. I mentioned Harlan Ellison. He was somebody I really admired as much as I did Le Guin for both fiction and nonfiction, but he and I got along great. We got to work together a couple times. I worked for the editorial job I had from 1993 until 99 was with the late Byron Price, who was a book packager, and he did a lot of projects with Harlan. So Harlan and I got to work together a couple times, and we stayed friends for a while. We kind of lost track of each other in the 2000s, and then of course he passed in 2018. But him I was always fine with. But Ursula, man. And that was bad.
Yeah, one of those instances. No, it's okay. It happens to us at one point or another. Because I've been going to conventions 13 years, and I've run into some great, wonderful people along the way, whether they be actors or other writers and things of that nature. Granted, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to run into our friend Bobby Nash yet, because he's down there in the southeastern United States, and we're in the Northeast, so it's kind of hard for him to. It's a long trek from the great state of Georgia all the way up here, with and whether it's Maryland, PA, New York, whatever. Bobby, we hope to have you up here because we really like to have you, please, if that's a possibility. But yeah, I mean, I try to. I didn't really get tongue-tied, but one of those times where I felt like I was not going to be able to react properly or professionally, whatever it was. I mean, I had a great conversation with this one person, but I felt like I was making a complete fool of myself. But it actually turned out to be fine. I talked to Kevin Nash, a former professional wrestler, for like 20, 30 minutes because I watched him back in the 90s. That was one of the first wrestlers I remember seeing on television at the time. And I told him, I said, "You're the first wrestler I ever saw on television. You are my favorite for a reason because of everything you did with the NWO Wolfpack and all the other things you were doing at the time. And I just want to say thanks." And blah, blah. So I just kept jibber jabbering on, and I don't know if he was okay with that or if he was getting. I couldn't tell, but he had he and I had a really good conversation. He signed all 5 items that I brought with me, to personally get signed. At the end of the conversation, he, as I'm walking away, I get 6-8 feet away from him. He's like, "Wait a minute, hold on a second. I want you to come back here for a second." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, first of all, thanks for being here, and for me, but I want to give you this." And he just randomly signed one of his 8x10s and gave it over to me.
Nice.
Randomly. I didn't ask him for that. I didn't expect it whatsoever because I already had my personal items that I got signed.
Yeah.
And he signed it. And I'm thinking to myself, see, this is why this is why people need to go to conventions, because you never know what kind of moments
you're
going to witness, much less, be a part of for yourself, because it's an experience. That's what conventions are, right? I mean, it's an experience, so that's one of the highlights for me, although I feel like I just jibber jabbered on for a little too long, but he seemed to have handled it fine. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? I could be completely off base. What is one book that belongs on every single person's bookshelf that is not one of your own?
Actually, I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. Ursula K. Le Guin's essay collection, "Dancing on the Edge of the World." Just some absolutely brilliant essays on a variety of topics about writing, about science fiction, about life. Just absolutely great stuff. There's something there for everybody, and I would loudly recommend that book, which I assume is still in print. I honestly don't know. If you can find it, it's got some of her best essays in it, for sure.
All right. Well, if I can find that, I'll add it to my Amazon list.
Yeah.
So that always helps. Who is an author, living or dead, you would love to have a conversation with, and why?
Earlier I mentioned we got to do. I got to work on Alfred Bester's the Alfred Bester Library that we put out. I never got to meet him. He died before I really got involved in the field. But I would love to have a conversation with Alfred Bester, just because he did so much and saw so much and was a part of so many, so much of the early days of science fiction as well as of superhero comics. Bester's the one who wrote the Green Lantern Oath that were in Brightest Day and Darkest Night and so on. He was just such an amazing writer, and I would have loved to have been able to meet him and talk to him. Also Mary Shelley, who was one of my literary heroes. Frankenstein is my favorite novel, and Shelley just lived such an amazing life, and a remarkably difficult one. And I would love to be able to sit down and talk to her about all everything she went through.
No, I can understand that. Did you watch the original? Was it Frankenstein Universal Monster movie during the Halloween season?
I did, because I was actually prepping for the. I did a piece for Reactor Magazine, which is the website that I write for. I did a piece on various movie versions of Frankenstein in anticipation of the release of the new Guillermo del Toro adaptation. So I actually rewatched the Karloff, the 1931 Frankenstein, as well as the Frankenstein Unbound, the Roger Corman film that adapted Brian Aldiss's book, the adaptation that Kenneth Branagh did in the 90s, and what was the other one? There were 5 of them. Van Helsing, of all things, that really awful Hugh Jackman film, which nonetheless had what I think is one of the absolute best screen interpretations of the monster. Of all the ones, it's one that Hugh's closest to Shelley of a lot of the ones I've seen. Certainly one of the closest. The new Del Toro one does also, but it deserved kudos for that. And I also included Poor Things, which is not actually an adaptation of Frankenstein, but it engages with the text of Frankenstein in some very interesting ways. So I threw that in there as well. But yeah, so I was on kind of a Frankenstein kick because of the new film and because of that article.
Wow, I didn't know Kenneth Branagh did an adaptation of that. Wow. I mean, I've known about him professionally for years, but I didn't know he did an adaptation of that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was in 1994, I want to say. It was produced by Francis Ford Coppola. It was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, even though it really wasn't. I mean, it aped the structure of the novel more closely than most adaptations have, certainly more than the Karloff film did. But it still didn't really, well, read the article. It's on reactormag.com, and I go on at great length about the problems with that movie.
Oh, well, there you go. Shameless plugs, everybody. It tends to happen
Indeed.
here once in a while on these shows. Just out of curiosity, though, favorite live action adaptation of Spider-Man? Who's done it the best? Which actor?
Oh, Tom Holland, easily. Nothing against the others, but Holland is the only one. Tobey Maguire did a good Peter Parker, but I was never entirely convinced by his Spider-Man. Garfield was the other way around. He had a good Spider-Man, but I didn't think his Peter Parker worked at all. Nicholas Hammond was he was a 70s action hero that occasionally intersected with Peter Parker. But Holland is the only one who really captured the character I've been reading about in comic books for all these years. He combined all of the different elements, the smarts, the snark, the heroism, all of it. It has been in his interpretation, and I absolutely love his work on it.
Well, there you go. That's fair. That's spectacular, right? That helps. You are you excited about the news that Rachel and Brendan are coming back for another Mummy movie?
Yes. Provisionally. I mean, the third movie was really bad, but but the fact that Rachel Weisz is coming back ameliorates one of the problems with the third movie. Absolutely nothing against Maria Bello, but she was not did not work in that role at all. That was Rachel Weisz's part. But I'm looking forward to it just because I adore the first two movies so much. They're absolutely wonderful, and hopefully they will also get John Hannah and Oded Fehr back as well. But we'll see.
Yeah, they've been doing conventions recently. Some of the cast members of the Mummies, Brendan and Oded and some of the
also Oded Fehr's been doing a bunch of Star Trek conventions for obvious reasons. In fact, I got to meet him at my wife and I got to meet him at Trek Long Island a couple of years ago, and then again at Dragon Con last year, and he was absolutely incredibly sweet and very friendly, and it was great to meet him.
Oh, that's really cool, man. I'm jealous because I mean I've seen him in other stuff. One of the things I remember him being, he was on a TV series called Covert Affairs with Piper Perabo. I don't know if you
yeah.
He was even when he's not in it very much. He only has what you call guest star appearances.
Yes.
But when he shows up, he's like, all right, what's next, Mushroom? And I'm like,
he was great. Yeah, he was great.
There's a bit of a flirtation going on between Piper and Oded. I'm like, isn't this the guy from the Mummy and Deuce Bigelow, and he's hitting on Piper Perabo? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I wish that show would have lasted longer. That's another show.
Yeah, it was fun. It's funny. Parabo's was on a show called Butterfly with Daniel Day Kim. And it's weird because it's like she's playing the evil Mirror Universe version of the character she played in Covert Affairs.
That's very true. Yeah, and I've been a fan of Perbo since a little indie film called Coyote Ugly came out.
Yes.
So, I'm just saying. Piper, if you're watching this, we love you to pieces. I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to Keith DeCandido for being our guest on this week's episode of And I Quote. Keith, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and talk to us about some of the wonderful things you're doing and things you have put out there in the world. If someone wants to know more about you or purchase copies of your books, where can they follow you?
You can find my books at whatever your online book dealer of choice is, or at your local bookstore. All the usual places: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Powell's, whatever. And if to find me online, just if you plug my name into a search engine, I'm the only thing that's going to turn up. There's nobody else with that name. I have a blog because I'm old. It's on WordPress. It's DeCandido.wordpress.com. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I am on Threads. I am on Blue Sky. I am on the site I still insist on calling Twitter. I'm on TikTok, and I have a Patreon. And I have a YouTube channel, but I haven't updated in a while. I do readings of my short fiction. I did readings of my short fiction. It's something I started up in 2020 during lockdown, and I kept it going for a while, but I haven't updated it in a bit. But everything else, it's very easy to find me online, and I post fairly often, so it's easy to keep up with me on stuff. So.
All good things. Well, thank you, sir, for being here. It was great to see you. Congratulations once again. Look forward to seeing you very soon up at there, Far Point.
Yep.
Give me a great show had by all. Thank you so much for being here. We will definitely be talking to you again, and look forward to having you back here on And I Quote, or maybe some of the other shows that we do here at the And I Quote channel and the And I Quote channel community. So thank you so much, sir. My name is Ryan of And I Quote channel. Follow me across all forms of social media simply at where am I pointing to? Where is it? There it is. At And I Quote channel. That's where you can follow us on all forms of social media, catch up to date on all our shows. We're on the road to 5,000. Once we do, we'll have a live stream that will include special giveaways that you, the person who is watching or listening to this program right now, are going to be eligible to win. And guess what? The seasons are changing. So we got hoodies, we got shirts, we got stickers you can add to your water bottles, your notebooks, your writing journals, such as It's Word Slinging Time. Giving our good friend Bobby Nash another shout out there. So check it out. Links are in the social media bios down in our pages, as well as in the description of this video down below. And as we were talking about earlier, my story, Wolf of the West, being published, which is published by Veritas Entertainment, part of the anthology Western Tales Volume 1. You can find copies of it in ebook, paperback, and hardcover on Amazon. Once again, links are down in the description below. And a good friend of ours that we spoke about earlier, Bobby Nash, his new book, Snow Island, is out right now. It's part of his Snow series. If you like crime fiction, if you're a fan of things like Burn Notice and Die Hard and 24, this series is for you. So check it out. It just came out a few weeks ago. Get it online, Amazon, all your normal places you would buy books and things of that nature. And also, one of the things I wrote about as far as a critique for the Snow series ended up on the back cover of this very book, Snow Island. So thank you so much to Bobby Nash for putting that on the back cover of this installment of the Snow series. I am so grateful to be a part of it and contribute to it in any way, shape, or form. So, Bobby, we love you, man. Thank you so much. Cannot do it. None of this would have been possible without you and all the wonderful people who have supported me over the years. So, thanks. Appreciate you. Once again, Night Quotes on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Movie watch-alongs are on Friday nights, 7 o'clock Eastern, and other pieces of programming will be posted and updated along the way as well. Movie watch-alongs are coming up next week, so holiday season is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of great movies are turning a certain age as well. So that's going to be loads of laughs, loads of fun. Do not forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when the videos go up or they go live. Remember, life is better when supporting indie creators from all over the world. Take a look.
You've worked hard and written a great book. Now it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasmafire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasmafire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
Hey everyone, Bonnie Gordon from Star Trek Prodigy here. Make sure to tune into And I Quote podcast on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe.